Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl Butler, and you're listening to the Mighty Mommies Quick and Dirty Tips podcast, which will help make your life as a parent a little bit easier and a lot more fun. Welcome! This is episode number 302, where my special guest is Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, the savvy psychologist, and today we'll be talking about defiant kids and getting some great strategies that you can implement immediately to turn things around. As the mom of 8 kids, I get asked dozens of questions about how I survived the countless sleepless nights with my newborns, how I overcame the struggles of toilet training, and managed to keep my sanity intact while being a stay-at-home mom with so many young kids underfoot. But the question I'm asked most often, hands down, is how to handle a defiant and rebellious child. Hundreds of Mighty Mommy listeners have written to ask for guidance on effective strategies that will turn their disobedient child into one that's respectful and well-mannered. I've addressed this topic in several previous episodes, including 6 tips for handling a defiant toddler and 6 ways to handle a defiant teen without yelling. But today, I am thrilled to have my colleague, Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, otherwise known as the savvy psychologist, join me in addressing the topic that continues to weigh heavily on so many parents' minds. Together, Dr. Hendrickson and I have sorted through the mailbag and chose 2 of the most common questions about defiant kids: how to get kids to be respectful and how to make consequences for bad behavior effective. We've got tons of helpful tips for tackling both these questions. So here we go. One Mighty Mommy listener just wrote in exasperated, and she writes, "When I ask my teen to do something, I get eye rolling and back talk. How do I get my child to act respectfully?" Ellen, welcome to the show, and we'd love to hear from you on this.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I've wanted to work with you for so long, so this is really exciting. So this is a great question. Disrespect is really frustrating. We've all been left in the wake of a smart remark thinking, did that just happen? But you can't force your child to act respectful. And you probably don't want them to put on an act anyway. I imagine you want the real thing. So they can try these 3 tips. Tip number 1 is to model respect in your interactions with your tween or teen. So this is the big one. It's basically the golden rule, but it's even more important in a parent-child relationship because you're the role model. So let's look at the difference between the following 2 examples. Which is more respectful? And just as importantly, which is likely to be effective? So a disrespectful parent might say, "Why haven't you started your homework yet? It's 7 o'clock already. Do you want to fail your math test tomorrow? I can't believe this." Whereas a respectful parent might say, "Hey, I know this video game is really fun, so you may have lost track of time, but it's 7 o'clock, which is the time we agreed you'd start your homework. And I remember you have a math test tomorrow." So it's not just the words. Tone and delivery count too. So don't yell from the adjoining room while staring at your smartphone. Go to them, make eye contact, and say it gently. And then actually listen to the response. You'll probably never hear, "Oh, thank you, dear mother, for your kind reminder," but you may get a grunt of agreement and some actual action out of the second approach rather than a smart remark. So then, tip number 2 is to include your tween or teen in creating solutions for chronically disrespectful situations. So if you're going through the same nagging motions night after night, call a meeting. Sit down, calmly spell out the problem, and then surprise them. Ask them to think of some solutions. And you can model respect for them by truly listening and making them a partner in the solution. So for example, say your daughter is constantly battling with you over when to start homework. You could say, "Hey, we've been having daily battles about when to start your homework, and it's not working for either of us. I think you should start your homework at 7, but you're often busy with something else. How can we solve this?" Then unleash another surprise. Let your child air her grievances respectfully. Maybe she hates it when you yell or if you call her lazy. Maybe she needs some more wind down time after school. And now bring it home with a third surprise. Suggest that both of you work to change. So once you've come up with a mutually agreeable solution, say you'll give a 15-minute warning at 7 p.m., and then she'll wrap up what she's doing and start homework by 7:15, write it down. Somehow, putting the agreement on paper makes it more real, more solid for all parties. And finally, agree what will happen if the agreement is broken on either side. There shouldn't only be negatives for your child. So if you yell or call her lazy, the things that she was able to air, you'll put $5 in a jar, which your child gets when her homework is done.
Ooh.
If your child hasn't started homework by 7:15, she forfeits one beloved soccer practice. So post the agreement on the fridge, stick to it, and then work to encourage cooperation by bringing in tip number 3. Tip number 3 is catch your child being good and then label the good quality. So this is a great tip from the classic book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. Praise your child when they do show respect. And be specific in your praise and wrap the compliment in a nice, neat bow by giving the behavior a positive label. So for example, thanks so much for holding the door for that lady with the stroller. You were really respectful to her. Or you could say, I really appreciate that you unloaded the dishwasher without sighing or rolling your eyes. That's what I call respect. And your child gets a 3 for 1, knowledge that you actually notice positive behavior. 2, the positive reinforcement of a sincere compliment. And 3, a positive trait to apply to himself. And you don't have to limit it to verbal praise. Leave a note on her pillow, tuck one in a lunchbox, or tape one to his door. And that brings us to our last tip for this question. Tip number 4, don't expect immediate compliance. In a world of Google, we get millions of instantaneous responses, but your kid needs some time to process. So in the moment, state your case respectfully and walk away. They'll think about it. Regarding praise, you may have to give compliments and appreciation for weeks before they trust your sincerity. They may think you're just trying to mess with them and may even escalate the disrespect at first. But keep it up. No kid has the energy to be disrespectful in the face of genuine respect, cooperation, and compliments. Eventually, they'll feel guilty, start to crave the approval, and you'll see some change. They won't be able to help it and will treat you with more respect.
Ellen, those are such great tips. Thank you. I'm sure my Mighty Mommy listeners will be able to use them to improve the situation in their homes. And you've just given me a couple of tips for my own home, so thank you. Now,
no problem.
Let's move on to the next most popular question about this topic. Another frustrated parent wrote in, when my teen breaks curfew or lies about his whereabouts, we impose consequences. We've tried grounding, taking away electronics, increasing chores, but nothing is working. How do we enforce consequences that would get his attention? What do you think?
So this is another great question. And I really hear the parent on this one. This is a really infuriating situation. Getting lied to is maddening, and not knowing where he is can be really scary. So try the following tips. So tip number 1 is choose one battle at a time. So parents give their kids dozens of commands a day. And I know I'd feel rebellious if someone was on my behavior all the time, and you probably would too. Same for your teen. So pick one big battle. Who cares if he wears black nail polish? So what if her room is messy? Save your energy for the important stuff, which in this case is making curfew. So that brings us to tip number 2. Be super specific and write it down. With a big problem like this, you can't make it up as you go. Make a super specific definition of what is expected. You want to anticipate arguments like, but that wasn't breaking curfew. I called you at 11 p.m. to tell you I was on my way. Or I wasn't in the house, but I was in the car in the driveway talking. You never said I had to be inside. You'll know you're being specific enough if it can be checked off a list. For example, your new super specific curfew rule might be curfew is achieved if your entire body is inside the house at 11 p.m. or earlier as measured by the clock on your cell phone. 11:01 p.m. or later is considered late. Write it down and hang it on the fridge. So then, tip number 3. Set a consequence he actually cares about and an incentive he actually cares about. So a note about punishment. There's increasing evidence that punishment doesn't work and instead either pushes the bad behavior underground or leads to worse behavior. And this kind of makes intuitive sense. If you missed a deadline at work and your boss said, "That's it, I'm taking away your next 2 paychecks, that'll teach you," would you nod approvingly and thoughtfully reflect on the ways you could improve? Probably not. Instead, you'd be pissed. You'd fume about how much you hate your boss. You'd probably play out some revenge fantasies in your head. And now that you know just how to push your boss's buttons, you might even do it again. So, with small potatoes bad behavior, it's best to minimize punishment and try a positive approach. However, when truly unsafe behavior, like lying about where he is, becomes chronic, punishment does have a role. So here's how to do it well. First, choose a consequence he actually cares about. If you take away his phone, but he can just chat with his friends from his laptop, it's not going to work. So choose something that he will actually be motivated about, whether it's use of the car, having money, or being able to stay out as late as his friends. Spell out the consequence for breaking the rule just as specifically as the rule itself. Write it down and display it just like the rule. Next, add an incentive for adhering to the rule. Some parents think that this means rewarding kids for doing something they're supposed to be doing anyway, but a one-sided punishment-only approach isn't going to get them excited. So add some carrots as well as sticks, and you'll get a more motivated response. This is where you can get your child's input, discuss it together, and come to a mutually acceptable reward. For instance, for every weekend night he makes curfew, he gets to stay out half an hour later the next weekend night. Again, write it down and display it. And the last tip for this question, tip number 4, after the rules and consequences are set, no negotiating. Whatever's in the agreement goes. When your child tries to argue, point to the written agreement. They'll try to escalate at first, but hold your ground. It'll save you energy and arguments in the long run.
Thank you to Dr. Hendrickson for these helpful tips. You can check out the Savvy Psychologist podcast at quickanddirtytips.com/savvy-psychologist or subscribe to the show on iTunes. If you have a defiant teen in your life, try out these helpful tips. I'd love to hear how they work for your family. And if you have any other strategies for dealing with the defiant teen, please share them in the comments section at quickanddirtytips.com/mighty-mommy, or you can post your ideas on the Mighty Mommy Facebook page or email me at mommy@quickanddirtytips.com. Thanks so much, Ellen, for joining us today. This is going to be great for so many families.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Had a really great time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thanks again to my special guest, Dr. Hendrickson. So, how do you handle defiant kids in your household? Share your thoughts in the comments section at quickanddirtytips.com/mighty-mommy, or you can post your ideas on the Mighty Mommy Facebook page, or email me at mommy@quickanddirtytips.com. Also, visit my family-friendly boards at pinterest.com/mightymommyqdt. Thanks for listening, and until next time, happy parenting.